not be reading light novels.
That man and his manga.
Yes, it's once again that time of the month where I talk about all of the light novels I read in the last month and see whether or not they're worth reading. At least according to my opinion. Now, I actually have read quite a lot of titles this month. Many thanks to Yen Press for sending out a bunch of review copies. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to link some of the more interesting ones in the comment section because I'm only going to cover ground once again for titles such as Bride of the Barrier Master, where I don't really have anything else to see that I didn't see in the original video, so go check that one out at the end of this one. So first up we have Spy Classroom Volume 4. Now this is a title that originally I read way back, what, 2021 I believe? And you know what, I wasn't that struck on it, I wasn't that fussed about it when I initially read it. I was like, oh yeah, I enjoyed it well enough, but it didn't really stick out to me. And I went back to it late last year and pretty much binged Volumes 2 and 3 straight off. I did buy Volume 4 pretty much straight after finishing Volume 3. I just kind of got bogged down with other titles and I went back to it. And you know what? It is really good. This basically clears up the original arc for the girls, and I like that. I like that, the fact that it's kind of giving a little bit of closure for some of the plot threads. And you know what, this one was just another epic little tale in the saga of the Spy Classroom girls, or Spy Room, whichever way you want to call it, because it seems to be called something different on Crunchyroll. Each of the characters gets their own time to shine in this one, and I really like that. I really feel like the girls have came a long way from Volume 1, where, you know, they weren't particularly interested and it was clearly focused on one particular character. Now, of course, we don't have deep focus on all of the characters yet, but that'll come in future volumes, I'm going to guess. But yeah, this is actually one that I started off not really caring much for, but it's now one of my firm favourites, and I can't wait to get the next volume. Next up is God's Games We Play, and this is one that I will be covering in the near future, or maybe I've already covered it in the near future because I've already recorded the video. And this is about a bunch of gods who like to play games, and it's games like, you know, like Squid Game or Kaiji or Yu-Gi-Oh! Random games which involve other contestants being gambled and their lives are on the line, except the lives are not on the line. There is a main character who is this beautiful girl who is actually a dragon. Yes, that's right, a dragon, a god, who has been asleep for so long and has came back and now is going to challenge the other gods to their games. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of interesting things about it. There's a lot of things I don't really care for. For example, this main girl character, she kind of gets sidelined for a less interesting main character. But you know what? The games themselves are all actually really interesting, and I did appreciate that for it. It's one of those ones where you're either going to love it or you're not really going to care much for it. But I did enjoy this enough to at least try out Volume 2 when it drops in, I think it's like May or June or something like that. So yeah, it's going to be one of these one volume a year kind of situations, but it was okay. It wasn't anything special. I did have a lot more grievances which I will go over in the full-on review, but you know what, it is a fun little title and it might be worth your time if you love games. Next up, I once again delved into the world of Rascal Does Not Dream with Rascal Does Not Dream of a Knapsack Kid. And again, much like Spy Classroom, this wraps up a massive arc. This wraps up pretty much the school arc, and now I believe we're going on to the college arc. As you would expect from the whole of the Rascal series, Rascal franchise, there's a lot of interesting characters, there's a lot of twists and turns in this, and it actually deals with a lot more of the main character's problems rather than the other character's problems, which I really did appreciate. It was a really nice volume. As to be expected with Rascal, I laughed, I cried, and I had a whole flurry of emotions as I went through this one. I couldn't put this volume down. It was so good. And again, much like Spy Classroom, this is a good jumping off point if you're not that interested in the series. After this one, it is a good jumping off point, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty much here for the long haul, and I believe we are starting to really catch up on the Japanese releases now. I believe this is actually one that is getting a movie in the near future, so yeah, if you like Rascal, do continue with the series. I do really enjoyed. I always recommend it. It's one of those ones I don't think many people talk about as much, and I'm quite surprised it isn't as popular as it is, considering how popular the series was. But yeah, another fantastic volume, quite frankly. Next up, we have more of a novel, and this is Anime Supremacy. Now, if you remember my light novel collection video that I did a few months ago, I kept talking about this one. I was just like, oh, yeah, forgot about this one. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to make the effort, I'm going to push through, and I'm going to get through this. And this is when I knew Press was sending us a load of volumes. I was just like, well, if I don't read it, I'm never going to read it. And you know what, it was really good. Now, this is about the anime industry. This is about a trio of girls who all work in different departments in the anime industry, and they want an anime supremacy, which is that elusive title which just kind of overpowers all of the opposition. And you know what, this one was interesting. The first two parts to this were a little bit slow going. They were interesting enough. They didn't kind of grab me as much, but the last one, which to be fair is the meat of this particular title, absolutely loved it. Couldn't stop reading it, to the point I was reading it instead of like playing Xenoblade and stuff like that. I really enjoyed this one in the end. It was absolutely fantastic, and I want to see more titles talking about the anime industry. How about a light novel that talks about the light novel industry and stuff like that? Could be interesting. But yeah, if you ever do get a chance to see this one, I would recommend checking it out. It's a one and done. It's a one and done novel. It is 400 pages and it is quite compact, so it is going to be a bit of a big read, but don't let that put off you. Really would recommend checking it out if you do have some interest in the anime industry. They do use a lot of comments and kind of anecdotes from the industry and stuff like that, so it is quite interesting if you are into that kind of thing. I really enjoyed it myself, so yeah, go check it out. I really recommend it. I will do a full-on review, I think, on this one in the near future, because yeah, it's worth talking about a little bit more. And I'm going to talk about another, well, novel, and this is, well, The Devotion of Suspect X by Keigo Higashino. Now, I read The Miracles of the Namiya General Store a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. And I was kind of fancying getting a few more novels rather than light novels, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to try this. And I bought it, and it sat on my shelf for a few months, and once I read it, I absolutely loved it. Now, this is a thriller. There is a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot of smart stuff. And when I say smart stuff, I kind of feel like it feels a lot more adult than you would kind of get in a lot of other titles, such as, for example, Classroom of the Elite or Rascal Does Not Dream, which are, I would say, they kind of act smarter, but it still acts smarter in terms of smart, but still catered for a younger crowd. Obviously, this is more for adults. I absolutely loved it. I read this and straight away I was just like, oh, I want to read more. I want more of this, and it was so good. If you want an introduction into novels, this Anime Supremacy, Miracles of Namiya General Store, anything from like for example, the Tatami Galaxy and stuff like that, go check them out. You will not be disappointed, and you might have a new addiction like I do. Next up, we have Apparently Disillusioned Adventures Will Save the World, Volume 1, and I did cover this in a separate light novel video, but I want to talk about it again because this one is really worth checking out. I really enjoyed this one. So this is about a bunch of adventurers who, well, they all have their interesting pasts, their dark pasts, and they vow never to trust anybody again. However, they soon discover they are out of money and need to form a party. So they form a party with each other, and yes, shenanigans ensure. I absolutely love this one. Like I said in the full-on video, there's a deep dive into all of the characters' backstories. You get a lot of character development. The characters are all well built and well thought out in terms of a light novel, especially for a volume 1. And honestly, I was just so impressed with this one. It was a really good title. I would really recommend checking it out. The anime is ongoing. There is, and I will reach over and grab it, there is also a manga which Yen Press also sent me. Both of these were sent for review purposes. I will do a bit more of a comparison between the two, but yeah, the manga was alright. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of manga versions of light novels. It skipped a lot of things. It did a lot of things in a different order. For example, in this one, it does all of the characters' backstories first and then kind of continues on. This kind of does one of the backstories, then continues on, and then does another backstory, then continues on. It's still fine. There's a lot more ecchi scenes in here, but I felt this one was the better read. You do get, it is a completely different experience, but yeah, this one I'm not seeing anybody talking about. I'm not even seeing anybody talking about the anime, but it is a fantastic read, so do not skip out one of it. I will leave in the comments a link to checking out this particular volume, of full-on review, because yeah, it's a good one. It's really worth talking about. Have you heard of the words peak fiction when it comes to light novels? Well, I've actually been reading peak fiction in terms of light novels. That's the sentence of a bookworm. I will do anything to become a librarian. Part 4, Volume 3. Now, I feel like I'm just constantly catching up with this particular series. The next one, I believe, has actually just been dispatched by Amazon. So, yeah, Part 4, Volume 4 will be out. I will try and get to it as soon as possible. But honestly, I adore this series. It is so well written. We are just at a point where constantly stuff's happening, and honestly, I just love to sit down and have a binge read of it. I can't really say anything more about this particular volume that I haven't already. Again, this is another one I want to constantly go back and do a huge video on it, because it started off as being one of those ones I liked, and then I was catching up on it, then I dropped for a while, then I went back and I very quickly went from, I think it was like 11th, I think, when I started reading the first few volumes, and then over the last year I've read the entire thing, and it's like my third favourite series now. So yeah, it's constantly rewarding. It is easily one of the best light novels I've ever read. In fact, probably in terms of light novels, in terms of world building, character development, it is probably the best one I've actually read. Do not skip on this one, because this one is such a good isekai. Throws all of the tropes out the window. It is just such a good series. Do not skip out on it, because it is easily one of the best light novels I have ever read. So yeah, let's talk about that other one, Classroom of the Elite Volume 6. Now, I have, as of recording this, I actually just finished this particular volume about an hour before doing this video. And I can tell you now, there's 350 pages in this, and I can't tell you a thing that happened in the first 250. This is another one with Classroom of the Elite, and it seems to be an issue with me with it. I just can't get into it. I've got 2 more volumes that I'm going to read and then potentially sell off. I feel like the biggest weakness with this author is that he's introducing a lot of characters. There is some character development. The characters are in a different situation than they were in the volume 1. There is character development. I feel like the cast is getting more and more bloated with not enough attention done on each of the characters, and I feel like there's too much of each volume just being filler. Now, 7Cs have an issue with some of their volumes where they have these massive thick volumes. There's 350 pages, but realistically it's probably around 150 pages because of how stinky it is, how big the font is, and how big of a trim they've got. But I felt that there was about 100 pages worth of actual genuine content in this volume. The rest of it was just kind of fluff. It was character development for introducing more characters, but to be honest, if I feel like you can take a lot of it out, I'm not going to be kind of like, oh yeah, it's a great one. But on the other hand, it did still make me want to catch up and read more of the series. I mean, I do enjoy the series for what it is. There's a lot of fluff, there's a lot of filler in these volumes, but you know what, I am still coming away at the very end and just being like, oh yeah, I did like that. I did really enjoy it. So yeah, I personally just don't feel this series is for me. I am with the full intention of reading it. Maybe do a review which will have everybody angry at us because people put this series on a massive pedestal, and I can't understand why. I can only assume it's one of those series that everybody kind of recommends, is very popular, People read it, don't read anything else, and just say, oh yes, peak fiction. But for me, it's probably in my top 50, but yeah, I'm not huge on it, and that's just my issue, and unfortunately at the end of the day, people are going to scream at me in the comments and be like, it gets good in the next volume. Well, they've said that in every single volume. I'm going to give volume 7, I'm going to go straight onto it, finish off the volumes I've got. If I don't like it after that, I'm just going to sell up. Irina the Vampire Cosmonaut. Now, I mentioned this one, I think it was in my top 10 light novels of last year. And I mentioned it and I was just like, you know what? This one, I think it was like number 10, and it was like, that was on volume 1 alone, and honestly, I was so excited for volume 2. And then very quickly volume 3 appeared, like, so it was like within like, I think I got this one like maybe on like the start of the month, and I think I got this like a week into the month. So yeah, I've binge read both of them, and honestly, such a good series. This one is very quickly becoming one of my favourite titles of all time. So this is about the space race, and yeah, I'm going to do a full-on review on this one eventually because it's that good. Space race, and what is happening in alternate universe space race in which it focuses on the not Russians, and they wanting to do anything they can to become the first in space, to the point that they will use vampires in their, well, training and their testing. And yeah, this is interesting because what they do is they treat vampires as if there's nothing, and yeah, it's I like that. I like that. It's kind of, I don't like the way that they kind of treat them, but it's interesting that they treat them. And obviously, there's this young girl, Irina, who's basically going, oh, she's going to be the first girl in space, first person in space, but she's going to be taken out of the records, and she's basically being told that she's going to kind of like, she's not going to have a good ending, basically the kind of scene. And honestly, it's a really gripping title, it's a really good one. What was very interesting is at the end of volume 2 something happens, and instead we have new cast members. That's right, so volume 1 and 2 was in the Russian side of things, this is in the not American side of things. And what I liked about this is that it's just as bad the way the vampires are treated in this one as it is in this one. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, just because it's like, it's not any better across the world. And honestly, it is so good. I don't want to say too much for spoiling things, but honestly, read this series. Ascendance of a Bookworm, Anime Supremacy, read this one. Nobody's talking about it. It is one of the best series I have ever read, and I absolutely love it.